Leslie on Pretty Little Liars.
Hi guys, it's
Lauren Daisy.
Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be explaining the entire plot of Mona Vanderwaal's death and how she faked her death and how it kind of got the whole plan kind of backfired on her and what led to her being in the dollhouse and that whole plot line. So have you ever thought to yourself, how did Mona Vanderwaal actually fake her death and how did that whole thing work? This is the video for you. This video is going to be split into two parts. So the first half, I will explain absolutely everything that happened in detail as it happened in the show. So when Mona died and when the girls were trying to figure out what happened to her, to the dollhouse, that whole thing, and as the flashbacks were revealed and they found out things in the timeline of the show. Then the second half of this video will be actually doing it in timeline order. So I will recap the entire events of Mona's death, but starting from when she first decided to fake her death with all of the flashbacks and all of everything that happened in the exact order that it happened in the real timeline of events, if that makes any sense. So obviously feel free to watch the entire video, or if you have one that you're more interested in than the other, then yes. This will be going through it exactly how it played out for the audience in the show, episode by episode. And then the second half, I will leave timestamps for it, like chapters, if you want to just watch the full recap in the timeline order as it happened from Mona deciding to fake her death, how she faked her death, and everything like that. Whereas obviously in this version of events, we actually think Mona died and then it's revealed she was alive, right? I feel like that was so much more convoluted than I meant for it to be, but hopefully you get what I'm trying to say. So, the death of Mona Vanderwaal took place in Rosewood, Pennsylvania, in her house on Thanksgiving 2011. So we're going to start with the 22nd of November 2011, and this was 2 days prior to Mona's death. And we are going from the afternoon. So Mona is sitting in her room by herself and she's kind of reading and she's listening to a French vinyl. So Leona, who is Mona's mum, comes in and tells her that she has company, and this is when we get the scene where the liars go to visit Mona and basically beg for her help with Alison, because Alison had recently returned and they feel like she is the one that is framing Spencer. So they tell her that Alison is taking this lie detector test and they're scared of what she's going to reveal because obviously she is lying about her story. She is saying that she was kidnapped, which the liars know is not true. And if Alison is revealed to have lied about this, they're also going to be accessories to this crime.
And why do you think that I can help you? Because you're Mona.
And Mona tells them, look, I am a number one on Alison's hit list, so if I help you, she is going to come after me. If she ever finds out that I did this, it's going to be bad. So you cannot tell her or anyone that I'm helping you with this. So they go, but Hannah stays behind, and Leona asks her if the bullying is happening again with Alison, now that she is back. And Hannah says, that she doesn't really know, but she thinks that Mona is definitely afraid of Alison and that actually all of the girls are afraid of Alison now. Mona then goes upstairs and she sends out a code A and says that Alison is plotting something big. So when Alison had returned, we saw that Mona kind of got this group together of people that had been wronged by Alison before, hoping that if they had a bit of an alliance going, she wouldn't be able to do the same thing again. So that evening in the nighttime, she goes to the brew to meet up with these people. We had Paige in there. I think we had Jenna, the twins, I think were there, Lucas. It was a pretty big group of people when she first met them in, I think it was the New York episode, the series finale of season 4. And so there was a huge group. And she goes, but no one is there. It is just Lucas. He is the only one. And he has said, Alison has gone to everyone else. She has gotten to them all and frightened them and basically convinced them that you are crazy Mona. That's what she's saying. That you're back to crazy Mona, how you were after it was revealed that you were A and you were in Radley, and that she is the saint in this situation, not the other way around. And Mona tells Lucas that she thinks that Alison has gone full sociopath and that there is something big that she is planning and she doesn't know what it is. So the next day, 23rd of November 2011, we are now one day prior to Mona's death, and she in the morning is at the school. She goes into the bathroom at Rosewood High and meets up with the other liars to tell them the results of Alison's lie detector test. And she says that she actually volunteered to take this lie detector test. They did not force her to. And Spencer says, well, she would only do that if she was convinced that what she was going to tell them was the truth. And Mona says, well, if you tell a lie enough and you believe it enough, then for you it can become the truth. And Hannah thinks it's more in the vein that Alison did something so awful that she refuses to believe that it is the truth, and therefore she passed the lie detector test when she was asked about whatever it was. Mona tells the lies that she thinks Alison is the one that stole the game from her, so she is now A, but she's not having fun with it anymore because the liars have kind of iced her out and they aren't speaking to her. So because they aren't really playing into the game she's trying to create, Alison is getting agitated. And in this moment, the liars are actually inclined to believe Mona. They think that potentially Alison is A and is the one kind of pulling the strings behind this whole thing. And Spencer says, well, if she is A, she has gone to the police to make herself look innocent and make the rest of us look guilty, kind of in preparation for whatever this big plot is. And Aria is kind of like, well, what is she making us look guilty of? Like, what the hell have we done? And Mona says, everything. Like, basically, she will throw you all under the bus in order to save herself. And she says that she will go and she will find out everything that she absolutely can about what Alison had told the police. But once again, they cannot tell anyone that Mona is helping them because she does not want the smoke. She does not want the smoke from Alison. And we see Leona actually comes to the school. And Mona's kind of like, what are you doing here? And she says that she's dropping off food, but it looks like she came out of the principal's office. And they never actually addressed this, I don't think. But I think what happened was she went to the principal to say, I think Alison is bullying Mona again. But obviously then when Mona disappears and all that stuff, this kind of gets forgotten about. But it kind of seemed like a bit of like planting a seed for something that never actually amounted to anything, which is just the name of the game on this show. So later that afternoon, with the help from Lucas, they both go into the Rosewood Police Department, and she's in a bathroom stall with her like kick-ass laptop that she's got. Lucas is in a different part of the police station. Why did I forget that word just then? Anyway. And basically she's doing something. She's doing her cyber shit. We love that. And she manages to like hack into the system and access their records so that she can then go to the liars. So at Spencer's house, Mona is kind of like showing them this video of Alison doing the lie detector test with Holbrook. Now, Holbrook specifically is the one that administered the lie detector test. And we then find out that obviously they were involved together when we see her and him together at the ice ball. So dodgy business all round. And they're asking Alison a lot of questions about Spencer specifically, which obviously is making Spencer nervous that she's actually trying to pin it on Spencer alone and not all of the girls, or at least that Spencer is the main culprit and the other liars are just kind of accomplices. And Caleb shows up and they're all kind of like, oh, you're not supposed to know about this, but Mona says, no, I was the one that actually called him to help me unlock some of these files.
Your software slays, by the way.
And one of the files that he managed to unlock was Bethany Young's police report. So now, obviously at this point, we know Bethany Young is the girl in Alison's grave. And the police have, from this police report, they have cleared Alison of any wrongdoing when it comes to Bethany's death. And that Spencer is actually the one that did it, and that she thought she was killing Alison and did it to gain favour with the other liars and kind of become the leader of the group and get rid of Alison. So that night, the liars, Caleb and Mona, decide that they're going to break into Radley to try and get some more information. And they go in and they actually find in Bethany's file through conversations that she's having, like they're all recorded on these little tapes, and they find out that Jessica De Laurentiis was actually having an affair with Bethany Young's dad and was kind of destroying her family. And because of that, she then has a link to Alison, and they think that maybe Alison actually knew Bethany and lured her to the house on that night, and potentially is the one that killed her, but is now trying to pin it on Spencer. So Mona keeps some of these files and they take them and they kind of flee because Holbrook, I think it was, had showed up at Radley. So they were like, okay, we don't need Alison's minion finding out what we're up to. So now we have reached 24th of November 2011, and this is Thanksgiving Day and the day of Mona's death. At the Vanderwaal house in Mona's bedroom, she is listening to the tapes of Bethany, and she gets a text from Hannah saying that Spencer has been arrested for Bethany's murder. So Leona then is loading food into the back of the car, and Mona is kind of, waving her off, and she says that Leslie is going to be at dinner with them, wherever they're going and having dinner with their friends. And Mona says, oh, that's so exciting. I was just talking to her on the phone last night. So we've introduced a new character, Leslie. And Leona kind of says, make sure you don't leave too late, you get caught in traffic. And she says she won't. And they hug, and she kind of waves her goodbye. Mona then turns around to go back into the house, and she hears some rustling in the bushes, but kind of thinks nothing of it and goes back inside. And then we, as the audience, see a blonde girl watching her. So then that afternoon, or I guess not that much later than what we just saw, they don't really say exactly, but we can guess pretty soon after. Mona calls Aria and says that she's been listening to the tapes and everything, and that it seems like Alison lured Bethany to Rosewood that day, and that she knew about the affair and she was jealous and she wanted Bethany dead. So Mona is straight up saying to Aria, Alison killed Bethany and I have what I need to prove it. I think that she's A, and I have what I need, come over here.
Aria, Alison is A, and now I can prove it. Grab your coat.
While she's on the phone though, the blonde person we saw in the hoodie picks the lock on Mona's door and goes in and goes upstairs to her room. Mona then looks into the mirror and says, game over, Alison, I won. And that's when she hears the creaking of the floorboards, thinking that maybe it's Leona. But then the blonde, it comes into the room and Mona screams.
Game over, Alison. I win. Mom?
So like I said, Spencer's in jail, so we just have Aria, Hannah, Emily, and Ezra is the fourth liar for the time being. And they show up to Mona's house. Obviously the door is open, they go in and they see blood absolutely everywhere. It is all over the floor, all over the walls, up the stairs. And so Hannah runs upstairs, calling out for Mona, and then she screams, and we're kind of like, what the hell has she seen? Then we see that the police are taping up the house with the crime scene tape, and everyone is kind of stood watching. Caleb and Paige are also there now. Leona, obviously Mona's mum. And then we see Alison, and she is kind of stood away from everybody else. She's like watching kind of from afar, knowing that she's not really welcome there. And we're kind of thinking, okay, is this her returning to the scene of the crime? What's the deal here? Holbrook is then kind of holding a bit of a press thing outside the house, and he says that with that amount of blood, they are considering this to be a homicide. They don't think that anyone could have lost that much blood and survived. So he declares Mona Vanderwaal as having been murdered, which obviously is heartbreaking for Leona. And the lies, everyone starts crying, and Alison just kind of looks around at everyone and leaves. She doesn't really show any kind of emotion in this scene.
Okay, that the victim's wounds were fatal. Mona Vanderwaal was murdered.
And Lucas was actually there as well, I forgot to say. Lucas was there, and he also looked completely shocked. The only person that didn't really look that surprised was Alison. This is also the one right before the Christmas episode. So Emily had been putting all her Christmas decorations up, and A goes over to her kind of nativity play setup thing she's got, takes the fake baby Jesus and replaces it for a doll that looks like Mona. You know, the dolls that the girls received that looked like them in the season 2 mid-series finale. It's like that kind of style. almost like American Girl doll kind of vibes, and puts the one that looks like Mona there, and then takes the baby Jesus and puts it into the boot of their car right next to Mona's body, and she is just staring with her eyes open. So you're like when I watched this for the first time, I was like, oh my god, they've actually killed off Mona. This is crazy. So now we're doing a fast forward around a month. So it's been a month since Mona died, and it is the 23rd of December 2011. Hannah kind of reminisces about Mona as all the girls are like walking down the street and doing a bit of Christmas shopping. And Emily says that, you know, they haven't found Mona's body yet, so she's kind of still holding out hope that she's alive, but the other liars don't really share that same level of hope. And also Spencer is out on bail. And she is still kind of facing those charges for killing Bethany. So Mona's lawyer then approaches them and gives Hannah an envelope and says that in the event of Mona's death, he was told to wait 30 days and then give this to her. And when they open the envelope, they find a blueprint of the De Laurentiis house, and it is labeled with all of the places that Alison likes to hide things. And the note says, "Hey Han, if you're reading this, she's still playing the game and I'm talking to you from the grave. But I went out fighting and that's what you need to do. Promise me you won't give up, Hannah. You have to keep looking. Kisses, M." And they think that Mona did this to show them where the evidence is that Alison killed Bethany, or at least lured her to Rosewood that night. So if they can find it, they can get Spencer, you know, acquitted for this crime. Is acquitted the right word? Because she's not been charged yet. I don't know. Set Spencer free and get Alison in jail instead. Then we have like the rest of the Christmas special, which is just one of my favourite episodes. We have the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, 2011. And this is when, you know, Mona's ghost comes and visits Alison. And that's kind of it. Obviously, she's in this episode technically, but as a ghost. So now we have Mona's funeral and kind of the days after that. So we see Mona's funeral, and because they didn't have a body, they put like all of Mona's favourite things into the casket. And at the funeral, Alison comes to pay her respects, which she comes to pay her respects in like a flowery dress, like, babes, come on. And Leona slaps her across the face and accuses her of killing Mona, and is basically screaming at her, asking her to tell her where the body is. Hannah then goes and she actually gets help from Mrs. Grunwald, because Mrs. Grunwald has that kind of spiritual sixth sense kind of vibe going. And she says that Mona is not in Rosewood, but she is surrounded by earth, insects, and cold, which obviously at the time we thought this meant, okay, A has taken her and buried her somewhere. We also have a bit of a B plot running alongside this with Mike, where Ezra doesn't feel like Mike is acting like someone who has just lost their girlfriend. Like, he was dating Mona at the time, and he just feels like, you know, he's acting a bit weird, and this angers Mike. Caleb is also trying to get into Mona's laptop and see if they can find anything, and he ends up giving it to Aria, and then A ends up stealing it from Aria. Spencer goes to Jason and says that the police have actually found Mona's DNA in the boot of Alison's car, but because Kenneth and Jason are both saying that Alison was with them that day and giving her that alibi, the police can't arrest her. And she says, look, please come forward and tell the truth, because if Alison does not get arrested for this crime, it is going to be me. And you know that I didn't do this. Emily, actually, which was quite surprising, goes to Spencer and says that she has Alison's hairbrush and they can plant some of her DNA in Mona's house, and then it will be undeniable evidence. And Spencer, obviously desperate to get out of this, is like, you know what? Fine, we'll do it. Okay. And they go to Mona's house, but then as they're about to plant the evidence, Spencer notices a camera hidden in the vent. And the way that it is angled looks like it definitely would have caught whoever came in and murdered Mona. So because Hannah was obviously best friends with Mona and like knows Leona, they are like, right, we need you to go and tell Leona about this. And tell her about the cameras, because this is pretty good evidence. And Tanner, and so they do, the police go and they look at these cameras and everything, and Tanner and Toby show Jason the footage, and the footage is of a blonde girl in a hoodie kind of like dragging Mona around. And while, you know, we can't see the face of the person, obviously it's kind of leading you to believe that this is Alison. And they say to Jason, like, who do you think this could be? And Jason comes clean and he says, well, it could be Alison because I lied about where she was. She actually did leave the house on Thanksgiving Day. So the police then come and with the help of the liars actually arrest Alison for Mona's murder. After this, Ari goes back to her house and she tells Mike that Alison has been arrested for Mona's murder. And again, he is kind of unfazed by the whole thing. And she is like, what is going on? And he's like, I hate that everyone is now saying that Mona was this saint and, you know, all this sweet stuff about her funeral, everyone saying how much they loved her and missed her, when that is not true. All of you hated Mona. You only went to her, which is so true. They only went to Mona because they needed something from her. Like, Mike was the only one who actually saw how amazing Mona was and actually genuinely cared for her and loved her. And everyone else is just seemingly coming out of the woodwork now because she's dead. And honestly, he was speaking facts. So then we have after Alison's arrest, and on a police search, Toby actually finds a bloody knife, which obviously could have been the murder weapon that was used, but he puts it back and goes to Spencer and Caleb and says, I found this knife, but it actually has come from my family's cabin. And I think it's been like planted here to incriminate me, incriminate Spencer, whatever that may be. And he's like, I felt really bad that I didn't do anything. Like as a cop, I should have said something, but I just panicked. And Spencer and Caleb are like, right, well, we'll go and we'll, you know, destroy it. And Toby's like, no. He's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to leave it there. And if somebody else finds it, that is there. That we'll deal with it then. But for now, it stays where it is. But then when Toby leaves, Caleb says to Spencer, look, I have been in trouble with the police before. I stayed in that cabin. That knife will have my prints on it. It'll also have Toby's on it. It'll, you know, it's going to link everything to us. It's obviously planted by A. We need to get rid of it. And Spencer agrees to help him and get rid of it as long as they don't tell Toby. Which they do. They take it to the furnace of the school because apparently this school has a furnace now. And they destroy it burn it to a crisp, basically. It's good. It's gone. So Spencer actually then receives a text from Mona, which obviously freaks her out, and it is GPS coordinates. And Caleb explains to the liars that this is something Mona set up on her laptop so that if anyone tried to access her laptop or was able to access it, it would send this text directly to all four liars so that they would know where to go looking for it. So Spencer and Caleb go and they find that it is GPS coordinates to a storage unit, kind of in a shared sort of facility thing. And they go in and it is unit 1071. And they actually bump into their teacher there, Mrs. Horowitz, and are like, do you know who rents this one? And she says that it is a blonde girl, but she couldn't see her face. She just, you know, kind of saw her running away from the unit. But everyone says that the unit stinks. Like it smells really, really bad. So then Kayla and Spencer are like, what could be in there that smells so bad? Is it Mona? Right? But it's got like a super special lock on it that they can't pick. So Caleb decides he's going to pick the lock next door. They're going to go in through the vent and climb in and see what the hell is going on. So in the unit, they find Mona's laptop. They find her bloody clothes in bags. And they think that Holbrook is keeping these things here for Alison, right? Because Alison is now in jail. So if he keeps these things, he can slowly plant them, like the knife, as evidence against the liars to then get Alison out of jail. And then one of probably the most horrific and iconic parts of this show, they find the barrel. And they're like, do we think Mona's body is in this barrel? And Spencer says with all the chemical like products around them in all these bottles, they're either dissolving something or they are preserving something. So they're like, that's nasty. That is nasty. And they knock on the barrel and they're like, yep, that is full. That is a full barrel. Is it full of Mona? So Caleb actually does a bit of research after this and finds out that the storage unit was rented in Hannah's name, and it was rented one day before Mona disappeared. So again, it is all part of this plot to frame the liars. So Hannah decides, well, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm not going to jail. So she decides to break in. Caleb goes with her. They break into the unit. Her plan is to just get rid of everything. And when they go in there, everything is gone. Absolutely everything is gone except for the barrel. The barrel is still there. And Toby and Tanner actually show up to investigate the storage unit at the same time. And they bump into Hannah and Caleb as they're leaving, and they're kind of like, ooh, this is awkward and weird. Then Tanner and Toby go into the unit, and that is when they see the barrel, and they're like, okay, Mona could be in this. And Tanner also finds a few drops of blood next to the barrel. And while this is happening, the other three liars actually get lured into a ice cream factory, which is such a random one, but yeah. And they get like lured there because Mona's laptop was now there instead or something. I can't remember how they ended up getting them there, and like had shut them in to this room and anything. They get out and whatever. But actually it was a bigger plot for A to be able to get their fingerprints, because A goes through the factory afterwards, sprays the doors, and reveals like the liar's full handprints where they're obviously banging on the door trying to get out. So now we're going to talk about Lesli Stone. So Lesli is first introduced the next episode after the ice cream factory one, I think. And she comes into the brew looking for Hannah.
My name is Leslie. I was a friend of Mona's.
She says that she's having a hard time believing that Mona is dead. She was actually with Leona when, at this Thanksgiving dinner when she got the call to say that something had happened to Mona. And they had met a few years ago. They're like families of friends. And yeah, they met. They really hit it off. And she unfortunately had exams, so she couldn't attend Mona's funeral. So Hannah's a bit like, okay, Leslie, we'll see where this goes. So then later, Hannah and Leslie are in Mona's room, and Leslie picks up Mona's copy of an Edgar Allan Poe book, and she keeps it. She's like, oh, just kind of want to feel like close to her by reading her book or whatever. It's this brown book with the red tassel. Remember this. So anyway, meanwhile this is happening, Spencer actually finds out through some of her mum's like police recordy lawyery things that Mike went to visit Alison in prison. And she says to Aria, you have to find out why. Like, he's your brother. Ask him, why the hell is he going to visit her in jail when she supposedly killed his girlfriend? So later, Hannah and Leslie actually go back to the brew, and Mike is there, and he sees that Leslie has this specific book, and he gets really angry about it. He says that she shouldn't be touching her things, that shouldn't have gone in her room. They need to go back to Mona's room and put that book back exactly where they found it. Exactly. And then when he leaves, like, Hannah's like, I will put the book back. Like, don't worry about it, Mike. It's all good. I will do it, I promise. And then he leaves. And Leslie says, I was actually on the phone with Mona the night before her death. So like the 23rd of November. And I heard her talking to this guy came in and, said that she had to speak to him to hang up. They had to talk. And that Mona, he was really upset. And Mona was like, okay, Leslie, I'm going to call you back. But obviously she never did. So Hannah goes and she takes the book back to Mona's room. And she has a flashback where she remembers Mona saying, no one ever gets out of Radley, and this whole kind of thing. And Hannah realizes that there is a hidden compartment in this specific book. It's in the spine, and when she pulls on the red ribbon, this little tape comes out of the spine. And she and Caleb listen to it, and they hear Bethany, ranting and being really spiteful about this girl that they assume to be Alison.
She's an evil bitch. Bethany. I don't mean nasty or rude. I mean evil, without a soul. You could be the nicest person in the world. She gets him to do whatever she wants.
So Aria then goes and follows Mike when he leaves the house late at night, and she sees him leaving sweets on the end of this boardwalk. So she goes over after he's left and picks them up and is like, what is going on? Why is he doing this? And he basically catches her and gets really angry with her and tells her that him going to visit Alison is absolutely none of her business. Veronica then tells Spencer that those drops of blood that we saw next to the barrel, they have been confirmed to be Alison's. And we also see Mike going to visit her again. Then the kind of end A scene for that episode is A going into Mona's bedroom, opening the compartment in the book and realizing that the tape is missing and that the liars obviously got there before they did. So now we're going to talk more specifically about Mike Montgomery. So there is a blood drive at the school, and Emily can't give blood because she did the Habitat for Humanity, is it called? The building houses in Haiti or something over the summer. So she's not allowed to give blood, but Aria, Spencer, and Hannah still do. And they're all sitting there together, and they see Mike over by where they're storing the vials of blood, and he knocks something over, causes a bit of a commotion, and the girls, aside from Aria obviously, because she's still standing by her brother, think that he stole their blood from the cabinet. Later on that day, Aria sees, she answers a call on Mike's phone from a blocked number, and it turns out to be the women's prison. And it says in Alison's voice that he has a call from Hank Mahoney. So that's obviously some kind of code name. And when Aria speaks, Alison immediately hangs up the phone. So she's like, what the hell is going on here? And she goes and confronts Mike about this, but again, Mike is not saying anything, will not tell her a word. We then see Mike messaging this Hank Mahoney online, and he says, she told me what to bring, I'll have it tomorrow, what time? And then Hank Mahoney says, I'll be in touch. Mike then goes over to his mini fridge, and he's got these cans of energy drink, and in one of them, he is hiding a vial of blood. So we're like, whoa, he did steal the girl's blood? What the hell is going on here? Emily then sees Mike later on in the street and he's using an ATM. She runs after he's left, sees the receipt and sees that he took out $400, but the balance on his account is $18,356.25, which is where is Mike Montgomery getting this kind of cash from? What is the deal? So Emily gives the receipt to Aria and is like, look, I know that you don't want to talk about this, but we have to look into this whole Mike thing. So they then recruit Andrew, because Aria's in her Andrew Campbell phase at the minute, and are like, will you help us follow Aria's brother? And he's like, yeah, sure. So they follow him out to a place called Jonah's. It's like a diner. And Mike goes in and he ends up, sitting down with Hank Mahoney. But Hank Mahoney is revealed to be Cyrus Petrillo, the kind of dodgy guy that Alison was seeing while she had disappeared. And obviously who she said to the police was her kidnapper. So her fake kidnapper, right? And they receive a text from A with 3 vials of blood. And each has a label on. One says Aria, one says Spencer, and one says Hannah. And Cyrus then confronts them because he's like, why are you here? Why are you eavesdropping? And he's like, you know what? Maybe we can make a trade. I'll give you what you want if you give me what I want. And the liars are like, what? Yeah. But then Andrew comes over, kind of protective, and interrupts, and Cyrus drives away. So then we see A, and they are watching a video. So Hannah had her laptop open when her and Caleb were talking about this plan to clear out the storage unit, and A, being A, had hacked into her webcam and filmed it. So she has an entire video of Hannah saying, we're gonna, burn the personal items, we're gonna dump the barrel in the river and all this stuff, like fully just black and white, explaining the whole scheme. And as A is watching this, we see them getting like a little pipette thing. They're taking Hannah's blood from the vial and putting it onto Mona's bloody clothes from the day that she died, right? So now, whenever these clothes get handed over to the police, not only will they find Mona's blood, but they will also find Hannah's blood on these jeans and implicate her in the murder as well. Because obviously it's a blonde-haired girl. Like, they think it's Alison, but maybe it was Hannah, or maybe it was both of them together. So in Mike's room, like the next day, the liars are kind of rooting around in there, and Spencer is so close. It's so annoying. She's so close to like going and looking at the energy drinks, but then they find a necklace, and the necklace is actually in like Morse code, and it spells out "I'm with you." So they're kind of like, is this for Alison? Like, was this a gift for Mona he never got to give her? Like, what's going on here? And then Mike realizes that Aria was in his room, and again is incredibly angry with her and like lashes out at her. So the Montgomerys, they're on a rocky road at the minute. So Aria says to Andrew, look, will you watch my brother? Please, just follow him around and see where it goes. And so Andrew watches as Mike goes into the like wooded bit behind Mona's house and puts something into a tree behind her house. And he's kind of like, what was this? And he said that he thought he heard someone coming, so he didn't want to go and look. But, maybe they could go back later and see what it was. So Aria's like, no, it's absolutely fine. Don't even worry about it. But she goes back later on her own. And she, like, climbs up the tree and she puts her hand in and she pulls out a vial of blood. So she's like, what? Is this my blood? Like, what the hell is going on here? And Mike catches her and he's like, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, well, what the hell are you doing? Whose blood is this? Is it mine? Is it Hannah's? Is it Spencer's? What the hell? And he says, actually, it's Mona's blood. And so Aria's like, okay, what? And Mike kind of lunges at her to get it off of her. And she ends up dropping it and it smashes over this like tree stump thing. And she runs away. And Mike comes in the house after her and she's kind of like, look, don't come near me. And he's like, let me explain. And he says that he had gone to see Mona a couple of nights before Thanksgiving, before she died. And we see a flashback of that. So we're thinking maybe like the 22nd or so of November. So we see Mona on the phone and she's talking to Leslie. So this is the phone call that Leslie had told Hannah about. They were on the phone together and, saying, they have so much to catch up on and all this stuff. And while she's doing this, we can see her, she is filling a vial with her blood. She is, kind of like, I was going to say extracting. Is that the right word? I don't know. Anyway, she's taking her blood and she's putting it into these little vials. And these vials are then going into like a mini fridge and it has dozens of other vials in there. There are loads and loads of vials of Mona's own blood that she seems to be like harvesting. So this is the point where Mike comes in and he is like, what the hell is going on? And she's like, I'll call you back. And she explains to him that A actually came to her with this opportunity to save Aria and all of the liars, and she will, kind of look like the hero. And the plan is that she will smear this blood all over the house, absolutely everywhere, and that they will frame Alison for Mona's murder. Because A wants Alison behind bars. So if she does this, gets Alison framed for murder, gets her put behind bars, then it'll be, the only way to kind of protect Aria, protect everyone else. And by doing this, she will then gain A's trust and will learn who they are and be able to expose them. So it's kind of a double. She's getting Alison out of the equation, but she's also getting A out of the equation. So she thinks she's kind of playing both of them, and she's going to come out on top and kind of be everyone's hero. She says that A came up with this idea and it is absolutely, you know, brilliant. And so he's like, you've been talking to A? And she says, not directly. You kind of have to build up the trust and earn it. And she's got that, like, you can like see she's got that kind of A brain going back on, where she's like really excited about kind of like being involved in the game again. She says, you know, to earn the right to know who A is, to speak to them, I have to commit to this 100%. So I will frame Alison for murder. I will go away for a while. And then once I've figured out who A is, I'm going to come back. I'm going to expose A. I'm going to, you know, show that I'm alive. Alison will get out of jail and the lives will be like saved from A, and I will be everyone's hero. And Mike's just kind of like, right, okay. And he's obviously upset by this because he is her boyfriend, and he asks how long she's going to be gone. And she says, you know, don't focus on that. Just focus on like the big picture here. It's only temporary. I will, you know, come back and everything will be fine. So now we're back to obviously Ari and Mike, and he says that he and Mona like fought about this whole plan for days. But she convinced him that she had it under control and, you know, would be safe. And he just kind of said, okay, I guess I will, you know, believe you. But he said he doesn't believe that anymore. He had thought, you know, the plan was going well. That's why he wasn't reacting. You know, everyone kind of thought, why is he not upset? But because for him, he didn't think Mona was actually dead, because he thought this plan was going exactly how it was supposed to. But he's not convinced anymore because he and Mona had made a bunch of plans to meet. That's why he, you know, had left the suites and all this stuff, but every time she never shows up. So the reason he went to go visit Alison was to find out if she knew anything about A, because he thinks that A double-crossed Mona and he actually did kill her. And Arya says, well, how do you know that Alison isn't A? Because obviously that's the theory they're working with, is that Alison is A. And Mike says she can't be A. She wasn't even in Rosewood when Mona was killed, because Cyrus, right, Cyrus Petrillo, got her out of town. A used Cyrus to get Alison out of town, said, will you meet, like Cyrus said, will you meet me? She goes, she waits at this park for however long, and then just to get her out of town so that she would not have an alibi for Mona's murder. So Mike's like, she's not A, like, absolutely not. So Ari's like, well, we have been going about this absolutely wrong. We've accused her of being A. We've literally framed her for murder accidentally. So bit of a whoopsie on our part there. He says that Mona gave him the vial of her blood as a promise that she would be coming back, and it was kind of all that he had left of her. So obviously it then got broken earlier when him and Arya were fighting, and he kind of cries, and he said that he was hiding it in the woods because he didn't want Arya to find it and start asking questions, which is obviously exactly what happened. And yeah, it was all he kind of had left of her. And it's a really sad scene. I honestly loved Mike and Mona so much, and I felt like there should have been, like, we should have gotten more of them. So now we're on to the hunt for A, and Emily, Arya and Spencer, that's it. They go and visit Alison and basically tell her everything. They're like, yeah, so this was a whole plan. Sorry, we like threw you in here and wouldn't let you escape. Arya and Hannah then go to visit Cyrus, and he's in the burn unit. So somebody tried to take him out, and he says that it wasn't an accident. I mean, he's all like bandaged up, like he looks gnarly. And he says that it wasn't an accident, and he writes down the word Varjak on a piece of paper. So now they're kind of like, is this an alias? Because, you know, Alison's favourite movie, Breakfast at Tiffany's, it's like Holly Golightly, she's Holly Golightly, and then he, you know, this guy is Varjak. Is that the kind of vibe we're working with here? Veronica then goes to Ashley and says that Alison has been offered a plea deal, and in order to get it, all she has to do is name her accomplice. And Tanner thinks that it's Hannah and is kind of pushing for Alison to name Hannah in this crime. So kind of back to what I said about earlier with the lawyer, he had given them that blueprint. When they had actually looked in Alison's house in these little hidey holes, they found a letter supposedly written by Alison to Bethany inviting her to Rosewood that night. So they thought, right, this is kind of our smoking gun of evidence. But now that they've spoken to Alison, Alison has said, I never wrote Bethany a letter. I didn't know who she was. That letter was planted by A. So now they're like, right, if all this evidence was planted by A and A wanted us to find it, maybe this wasn't Mona's lawyer. Maybe A hired this guy to frame Alison for murder. So Ezra goes and speaks to him, and he is shifty. He is shifty as. And he kind of like basically is like, I'm not telling you anything, and then like runs away. So Ezra, Emily, and Arya follow him to this like big gated house, and they don't really find anything. But Emily finds a receipt, like a receipt when they ordered pizza, and it says Varjak on it, and it has a phone number. So they're like, right, okay. So then Hannah is actually arrested for Mona's murder because the clothes that we saw A tampering with were given to the police, or like found by the police. So they're like, right, these are the clothes Mona's wearing the day that she died. They have Hannah's blood on it. Get her in jail. And in Mona's room, they find a hidden note that says Chandelier's rituals, sister launched lair, A ruler's list chained. Goodness gracious. Some of the clues in this show, what were we thinking? What were we doing? So now we're moving on to Alison's trial. So Leslie Stone ends up taking the stand, and she says that Mona sent her a letter a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving saying that she, was having a really hard time, and that Alison was threatening her because Mona was going to expose her fake kidnapping. So Alison was like threatening her over that, again trying to make it seem like Alison had motive to murder Mona. She also says that when she came to town, Alison's friends were really on edge and weird with her, asking questions about Mona, that obviously Mike got really angry with her. She said that Hannah wouldn't let her into Mona's room, and that Hannah basically stalked her the entire time she was in Rosewood, which obviously we as the audience know is not true.
Hannah Marin wouldn't even let me go into Mona's bedroom. She stalked me the entire time I was in Rosewood.
So then at the end of the trial, Alison is convicted of first-degree murder of Mona Vanderwaal. Hannah is already in jail as her accomplice, and Tanner also has Emily, Arya, and Spencer arrested, all as accomplices to this crime. So now we are moving on to the dollhouse, and the dollhouse takes place 5 months after Mona's death. So Mona has been gone for 5 months at the point when the trial takes place and the liars are kidnapped. So when the liars were taken, they were supposed to be being transported to another jail or something. The 4 of them, not including Alison, and then they're kind of mentally preparing for that when their truck is taken over and stolen by A, and they get kidnapped and taken to the dollhouse. And while they're in there, they walk into what looks like Alison's living room. They see someone like Alison, blonde hair, yellow top, sitting at the piano with the Alison mask on, and they think A's gone to Alison as well. But then when she takes off the mask, it is actually Mona, and this is when it is revealed to us and also the girls that Mona is in fact alive.
Hallie, is that you?
So she had been kidnapped by A, who had turned on her after they had made the plan to fake Mona's death. Mona was then forced to become Alison, so much so that A actually dyed her hair blonde. So it was not a wig. There's kind of like that scene of Emily like pulling at the hair, and the hair is real. She makes Mona talk as if she is Alison, refuse to acknowledge that she is Mona. She is 100% Alison. Wears Alison's clothes, makes her sleep in Alison's room. Like, it is full on. And she has now been doing this for 5 months. And if we think back earlier to when Miss Gromwald had said she's under the ground with like the worms and the earth, the dollhouse is underground. So Gromwald, she was almost there. She was on the right track. She was also tortured and forced to play games or suffer the consequences while she was down here for the past 5 months. So when the girls then manage to escape from the dollhouse, Mona leaves Rosewood for a little bit just to kind of recover from, you know, this traumatic experience. And when she comes back to Rosewood, she is worried that she is going to be charged, you know, for faking her death and spending all this, you know, tax money and all this stuff that was looking for her, and the trial and all this. But nothing actually comes of that. Like, she answers some questions for the police and they never really talk about it again. So I guess she got off scot-free, because she then... But then I don't know if she would say she was kidnapped by A. I mean, I guess she would, because, yeah, the liars were like, we were kidnapped. So I guess she would also be like, so was I. So I didn't really fake my death. I mean, I was going to, but then I didn't. So I guess they were like, you know what? Don't even worry about it, babes. And then obviously, due to Mona being alive, the liars, including Alison, were all acquitted of the crime. That is what happened in terms of when you watch the show, episode by episode, as things were revealed. And now I'm going to go through the specific timeline. So in exact chronological order, what happened, where it started, how the plan kind of unfolded and went wrong, all the way up to the dollhouse when it's revealed that Mona was actually alive. So a few weeks before Thanksgiving, Mona was struggling with the return of Alison. Obviously, you know, she had bullied her. She had, threatened her as A, like it was all this stuff. They had this long history. She kind of helped her escape. Like, she always knew that she was alive. She knew that she had helped her escape, and she wanted Alison gone. So now Alison's back. It's kind of a whole shtick, right? And I think because A saw Mona and saw that she wanted Alison gone again, she was stressed about her being back. A saw this as an opportunity to take advantage of how Mona was feeling and play it into their own game. So Mona then starts communicating with A, who obviously is then revealed at this time this was Cece. So when I say Mona's plotting with A, A's taking them to, like, this was Cece, confirmed, Cece Drake. So she's plotting with Cece, A. I don't know whether to call it A or Cece. Basically, if I say A, I mean Cece, and if I say Cece, I mean A. So she's plotting with A, and devising a plan to take down Alison. Obviously, Cece didn't want to take down Alison, she just wanted to keep her in Rosewood, but she knew that Mona did, so she could use these kind of feelings Mona was harboring against Alison to play into her own plans. And Mona obviously thought she was getting one over on A, but Cece was like, babes, you can't outdo the doer. So Mona believes if she takes part in this plan, she will learn A's identity and she will then be able to expose them and set all of the liars free and be their hero. So they devise a plan for Mona to fake her death. They will then frame Alison for this and get her into jail, and Mona will disappear, right? That's the plan. And so in order to do this and make it look real, Mona starts storing vials of her blood in this little mini fridge she has in her bedroom. So now we're a couple of days before Thanksgiving, and Mike goes to surprise Mona in her room. And this is when he finds her on the phone with Leslie, and she is filling up some of the vials of blood. So she hangs up with Leslie and says, we'll talk later. And she explains the whole plan to him, that she's going to fake her death and then she will return to Rosewood once she knows who A is, and she can kind of, like I said, set all of the liars free. That is the aim of this game, including Alison, who will obviously be acquitted for killing her when they realise she's actually alive.
Alison gets out of jail and your sister and her friends are finally safe. And I'm everyone's hero.
What do you mean, go away? For how long?
You have to look at the big picture, Mike.
Mike obviously does not support this idea, and they argue back and forth about it for a few days. So on the 22nd of November 2011, 2 days before Mona's death, in the afternoon, the liars go and they visit her and basically say, look, Alison is taking a lie detector test. We have been lying for her about this kidnapping for weeks, and we want to know what she's saying to the police. And Mona says, look, I'm number one on Alison's hit list. If she finds out that I am helping you guys, it is not going to be good for me. And I do also wonder if she thought that by helping the liars, that could jeopardize her plan with A, right? Because A is against the liars. And so if it looks like Mona is working with them, A might back out of their deal and she won't get to learn who A is. This is when Mona then goes upstairs, sends out a code A to her kind of anti-Alison team, and says that Alison is plotting something big. So that night, Mona goes to the brew and she says to lock the door because she feels like someone was following her. And she's kind of shocked to see that nobody showed up except for Lucas. And he says that Alison got to all of them and they all now think that Alison is the saint and that Mona is back to being crazy Mona. And so she says to Lucas, I think Alison has gone full psychopath. Now, I think this is where she started planting the seeds in Lucas's head as well, because she had to get to kind of everyone that she could to make it look like Alison was guilty. So by her saying, oh, I think someone was following me, or, you know, her saying, I think Alison is plotting something really big, she is then planting the seeds in Lucas's head that Alison was out to get Mona. When Mona eventually turns up dead, he will then point the finger at Alison. And I think she was hoping to do this with the whole group, but then obviously Lucas was the only one that showed up. So then we're moving on to the 23rd of November 2011, one day prior to Mona's death. And in the morning, in the bathroom at Rosewood High, she's talking to the girls and says, look, Alison actually asked for this lie detector test, and she passed. Mona says she believes Alison is A, and the girls actually agree with her. So again, by convincing the liars that Alison is A, it will make them even more convinced that Alison is the one that went after Mona, and they will also begin to point the finger at Alison once Mona has died. She says, look, I'll find out what Alison has said to the police, but you know, again, you cannot tell anyone that I'm helping you with this. Which she does. She goes to the police station and she manages to get the video of Alison's lie detector test where she's kind of answering a lot of questions about Spencer, which makes the girls nervous. So they're like, right, tonight we're going to Radley. Spencer and Mona go in while the others wait outside. And they're like, we're going to get some info. So they end up getting Bethany's file. They get Bethany's file and Mona ends up taking it back home with her. And they realize that Jessica De Laurentiis was having an affair with Bethany Young's dad. And again, by telling the liars this, she is giving them a potential motive for Alison to have killed Bethany. And if they're starting to figure that out, again, another layer on top of her motive to kill Mona. So again, she's brought this stuff home, and that night, she gets a call from Leslie, and then she's talking to Leslie on the phone. Mike comes in and tells her to hang up. And then again, we can assume they had argued about the plan. And she says, look, you're just going to have to trust me. And she gives Mike a vial of her blood as a promise that she will be coming back. So now we're at the 24th of November 2011, Thanksgiving Day. And in the morning, we see, the Vanderwaal house. Mona is listening to the tape again, and she's going through Bethany's file, and she gets a text from Hannah to say Spencer has been arrested. And I think it could have been at this point, potentially, or maybe a little bit later, when she hides the tape in the spine of the Edgar Allan Poe book, right? So then we see Leona loading the food into the car and saying, oh, Leslie's going to be there. And Mona says, oh, I spoke to her last night, which obviously lines up with the story that Mike tells. And she says, don't be late. Mona says she won't. Mona walks back into the house, thinks maybe she hears someone or something, but doesn't think anything of it, goes back into the house. We then see a blonde girl in the A hoodie waiting outside, who we now know this was Cece. So Cece had decided to double cross Mona and go and kidnap her that day. So then when Mona is back in the house, she calls Aria and she says, look, Alison lured Bethany to Rosewood. I am sure about it. She knew about this affair. And she was jealous and she wanted Bethany dead. I am sure about this. Again, though, we can assume this was part of A and Mona's plan to set up Alison. Because by doing this, Mona has told Aria, I think Alison killed someone. And then later, Mona turns up dead. So obviously Aria and the other liars are going to be thinking, right, Mona was on to Alison and now she's turned up dead. Alison must have been the one that killed her. Like, this plan was very well thought out. And yeah, she says to Aria, look, Alison is A and I can prove it, so come over to the house. And obviously Mona is thinking, I'm going to put this blood everywhere, disappear. they're going to show up. They will then walk in. They will see this scene. They will think I have died, but really I've just gone into hiding. And they're going to think Alison did it to try and get rid of me, right? But this is when Cece turns the tables on Mona, and she comes in and Mona like screams, and we can assume she probably had the Alison face mask on because Mona doesn't know that Cece is A, so she obviously didn't reveal that. So we can assume she probably had like the Alison mask on or something. And this is when she kidnaps Mona. Like I said, Mona looked in the mirror and she said, "Game over, Alison, I won." So she thinks this plan has gone perfectly, that she has planted all the seeds she needs to plant and that she's going to get away with this. And obviously it's at this moment that Cece double crosses her. So she obviously takes Mona and drags her out of the house. And this is what we see on that vent camera, right? That she had like knocked her over and had like kind of dragged her around. Cece at this point drugs Mona. She, I think, like injects her or whatever with this stuff that paralyzes her and makes it so that she can't speak, but she is still awake. She can still hear everything, because Mona talks about this drug later in Game Over Charles, when Jason and Kenneth look like they've died, but actually it's just a drug. And Mona explains that this is what Cece used on her. So it, yeah, basically just like makes it so that you cannot move, you can't speak, but you are kind of awake and you can hear everything and you know exactly what's going on, which it sounds terrifying, by the way. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of hard to know because Mona's plan was always to smear the blood all over the house. So maybe she had already done it and she was planning on like just leaving, or Cece then did this afterwards, but I just don't know if Cece would have enough time between kidnapping Mona, like when Mona called Arya to say to come over, to like do all that and then leave. I think maybe Mona had already set it up, so all Cece had to do was kidnap her, put her in the boot and leave, and maybe like cover her clothes in blood as well. I don't really I'm trying to do the timeline best I can, but it's still a little confusing. So yeah, Mona is then placed into the boot of Cece's car, and that is when, you know, she drives off and she flees before the liars arrive. Spencer has been arrested, obviously, for Bethany Young's murder. So it's just Arya, Emily, Hannah, and Ezra that show up to the house. They come in, obviously blood is everywhere. Hannah runs upstairs and screams, you know, she's looking for Mona. And this is when we get the press conference with Holbrook saying, look, this amount of blood, we don't think the victim would have survived. So we are officially ruling Mona as having been murdered, and this is a homicide case, not a missing persons case. Cece then goes and swaps Emily's little baby Jesus from her nativity scene out with a doll that looks like Mona and puts the baby Jesus in the boot with Mona. So obviously at the time when you're watching this, it looks like Mona's actually dead, but we now know that she was just lying there. She was conscious and knew what was happening, but she couldn't move. Now we fast forward, it has been 30 days, I think, around that, since Mona was kidnapped or presumed dead, you know, by everyone else. And Mona's lawyer approaches Hannah and says, you know, I was instructed to wait 30 days after Mona's death to give this to you. And it's a blueprint of Alison's house with all her kind of like hidey holes and where she keeps everything. The liars think Mona did this to show them where Alison hides stuff so they could then go and look for something that would prove it's Spencer innocent, right? Which kind of is true, but obviously it wasn't to like make Spencer innocent, it was to make Alison look guilty. These blueprints ended up leading the liars to evidence that A had planted, like the letter from Alison to Bethany that kind of showed that Alison had motive. That was not real, and A had planted those there for the liars to find, to give to the police, to kind of build into this whole scheme. So then in terms of Mona's funeral and the days after, they just filled a casket with like her things. And at this funeral is where Leona accuses Alison of murdering Mona because she knew how horribly Alison had treated Mona before. So again, Leona, like not knowing it, is feeding into this plot to make Alison look guilty. Hannah seeks help from Grunwald, and Grunwald says that Mona is not in Rosewood. She is, you know, underground in the dirt with the earth and the worms. And obviously we now know this is because she was surrounded by dirt because the dollhouse was underground, not that she had been buried. Caleb tries to get into Mona's laptop and he ends up giving it to Aria, who then has it stolen from her by A. Emily then tells Spencer that she stole Alison's hairbrush so that they can go and plant some DNA in Mona's house and get her like hook, line and sinker, which is insane, by the way. And when they go in to Mona's house to do this, they notice a camera in the vent that they think would have caught her murder. So they get Hannah to tell Leona, so Leona will then tell the police. And Tanner and Toby watch this and they see the scene of, you know, the blonde dragging Mona out of the house. And Jason admits that he and Kenneth had lied about where Alison was that day, and that could potentially be her on the footage. So the liars kind of help to barricade Alison in, and she is arrested for Mona's murder. So now we have the time after Alison's arrest. So they've received texts with the coordinates to Mona's laptop. Mona had set it up so that the liars would get notified if anyone opened it. And Spencer and Caleb go to this storage unit and, you know, they kind of manage to break in through the one next door, and they see, you know, Mona's clothes from the day that she died. They see this barrel that they think potentially could have her body in it. Like, it is clearly set up to start planting evidence to make the liars look guilty of this. So yeah, they think that Mona's body is in this barrel, but actually Cece had taken a cadaver, so like a body that was for like medical use or something, from one of the universities, like UPenn, had stolen it, put it in the barrel and dissolved it. So there was a real human in there, but obviously we know it wasn't Mona. And she dissolved it to the point that they wouldn't be able to tell it was Mona. They would be able to tell it was human, but they would not be able to tell specifically that it was Mona. And so they would believe that it was her in there. And she had also then planted the drops of blood next to the barrel to connect Alison to the storage unit and the barrel. Which, I don't know how she got Alison's blood. I know how she got everyone else's blood, but I don't know how she got Alison's blood. Hannah and Caleb find out that the storage unit is actually rented in Hannah's name, which obviously Cece would have set up just the day before Mona had died to frame Hannah. Because obviously Mona never wanted to frame Hannah, she only wanted to frame Alison. So any time that the lies are being involved, that is purely A, that was not Mona. So A had hired the storage unit. Caleb and Hannah go to get rid of everything, but everything is already gone, and the only thing left, like I said, is the barrel and the drops of blood. While this was happening, A had actually lured the other three liars to an ice cream factory so that Cece could steal their fingerprints while they were like kind of, you know, touching things in there, to then further plant on, you know, weapons or whatever it was, and, you know, further frame them so that A could get all of them. Mona's plan was just to get Alison, but obviously Cece took the reins, and now she wants all 5 of them in jail to kind of get them all. So Spencer, Hannah and Aria then give blood at the school drive. Emily can't because she was in Haiti over the summer. Mike knocks some things over and kind of causes a bit of a commotion, and they think that he has stolen their blood out of the like cupboard that all the blood is stored in. We see A watching this video that they had recorded from Hannah's laptop of Hannah and Caleb talking about this plan, how they were going to go, they were going to destroy the stuff in the unit. So again, A has planned it so well. Like, Cece did so well in planning it so that she could pin them for this murder 100%. And we see A putting drops of Hannah's blood onto the clothes that Mona was wearing when she died. So again, just so well thought out. I mean, you have to give credit where credit's due. Aria finds Mike hiding a vial of blood in a tree. And she's like, what the hell is this? Like, whose blood is this? Is it our blood? And he says, no, it's Mona's blood. And he explains to her, you know, everything that Mona had told him, that it was all a plan, that she was going to fake her death and make it look like Alison had killed her. But he thinks A double-crossed her and really did kill her. And this vial of blood that he had was kind of all he had left of her, which was just so sad. Aria asks him, why don't you think Alison is A? And he says, because A paid Cyrus, or maybe like Mona, I don't know, whoever it was, he wasn't really sure, paid Cyrus Petrillo to get Alison out of town on Thanksgiving so that she would not have an alibi for Mona's death. Again, it is all connected. It is all, you know, it's all puppeteering this plot to make Alison look guilty. So Emily, Spencer, and Aria then go to visit Alison and basically tell her the whole plan, tell her everything. Hannah is then arrested for Mona's murder because the clothes with Mona's blood on it and Hannah's blood on it were like turned into the police, or they found them, or, you know, however A had planted it. They found the clothes, so now they've arrested Hannah as well. During Alison's trial, Leslie takes the stand and says that Mona had sent her a letter a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving, saying that she was having a hard time, and, you know, that Alison was threatening her over exposing the fake kidnapping and saying that Hannah was like stalking her, and all of Alison's friends were being super weird when she came to town and like all this kind of stuff, right? We can kind of assume that Mona had sent this letter to further make it look like Alison was plotting something, or maybe A actually, they never really explained Leslie Stone that well, but maybe A had paid her to take the stand and say all this stuff to make them look guilty, because she doesn't have any loyalties to them. If she thinks Mona is genuinely dead, then I think she would probably do whatever she needed to do to get who she thinks her killer is sent to jail, right? So I'm thinking maybe A told Leslie to do these things. Leslie takes that specific book, that Edgar Allan Poe book with the tape in it. So I think maybe she knew or something of that sort. And Mike definitely knew, because he was very weird about that book and was like, you have to put it back exactly where it was, because I assume he knew that A was supposed to find that tape. And when the girls listen to that tape, it makes it sound like that Bethany is talking about Alison, again pushing that narrative about Alison, but we know she wasn't talking about Alison, she was talking about Jessica. But like I said, all of this evidence was so well planted to backfire on Alison, it's actually crazy. So Alison, with all this evidence stacked against her, is convicted of first-degree murder. Obviously, Hannah's already in jail, and Hannah arrests Aria, Spencer, and Emily as well for the crime. So now we have the dollhouse. So now the dollhouse episode, when Emily, Spencer, Aria, and Hannah are kidnapped while they're supposed to be going to jail and taken to the dollhouse. This takes place 5 months after Mona's death. So she has been kidnapped and been in this bunker for 5 months at this point. So like I said, the lies are kidnapped, they're taken to the dollhouse. This is when it is revealed to them and also the audience that Mona is alive. Cece has been keeping her in the dollhouse, making her pretend to be Alison, dyeing her hair blonde, making her play these awful games, like torturing her, making her wear Alison's clothes, sleep in Alison's bed, call herself Alison, like serious business. So then when all of the girls escape the dollhouse, Mona leaves for a few weeks to kind of recover from her traumatic experience. When she comes back, she does worry that the police will charge her because obviously, you know, she faked her death and spent loads of like tax money and all this stuff in this hunt to look for her and the trial and everything. But I guess because she explains that she was actually kidnapped, that they let it go and nothing ever really comes of that. And then obviously due to Mona being alive, the liars, including Alison, are acquitted of, you know, the crime of killing her because she's alive. So that is it. That is the entire plot of the Mona Vanderwaal death, or like how Mona Vanderwaal faked her death, plot line in PLL. Hopefully I explained it okay. I still think it's a little bit convoluted and there's still some parts of it that I don't quite understand, but hopefully it helped you, you know, get a bit more clarity on that whole situation, because I feel like how PLL reveal things, they do flashbacks and things take ages to kind of come out, so you can kind of forget exactly what was revealed when. So then kind of organizing it into a more linear timeline, I think makes it a little bit easier. So let me know if there are any plots that you really want me to do this with that you just don't really understand from the show, for any show like Gossip Girl as well. And because I think these videos are really fun. So yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's getting so dark now, so I'm gonna go and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.